What's up, everybody? I got a video here. Still working out the logistics of how this is all going to work out, but welcome to the guest room. India, this is where you stay, where you come and visit. So I got a video here, and I thought that the title was very intriguing to me. This video was done by a woman where she takes a look at the toughest exams that Indians face. And this was the exam for an Australian professor is going to react to India's toughest exam. I thought this sounded pretty interesting, so let's take a look at it.
Hi everyone. So last year I made a video about India's JEE advanced exam, but I don't think that I really did it justice. So for this video I wanted to invite some experts in science and engineering to share their thoughts on the exam. They spoke about the difficulty of the questions, whether they thought the exam would prepare students well for the future, and also shared their thoughts on exams as a whole. I also spoke to a couple of Indian students who took the JEE and are now doing research work here in Australia. For those not familiar, the JEE exam is an admissions exam into engineering colleges, and it's sat by over 1 million students competing for just a few thousand places. You sit 2 papers, each 3 hours long, on the same day, and it's all multi-choice. So with that, let's hear what people had to say about it.
I think this is it's a very tough exam. So if I was a student at high school and if this was intimidating when you first read it, I would not be surprised. And if it's not at all intimidating for you, then I would say congratulations, because you're a very impressive student.
Well, it's really interesting.
It looks pretty difficult. For example, the question in physics, I probably can't answer maybe most of it now, though maybe 30 years back I could do.
These exams seem, they're very long. They have a very wide variety of questions they cover, and they're hard. I think any student who comes up against these exams is going to feel pretty lousy by the end of it.
I'd probably, leave the exam room crying if I was in year 12 and had to do it. Yeah. Good luck. Good luck.
So when we compare this JEE exam with some of the subjects that are taught here in some of our universities in Australia, so here is a question paper I was looking at. The depth of questions that are asked can be even difficult for students in the first or second year who are studying in bachelor degree level in Australia.
It's really quite ambitious that they're trying to test chemistry and physics and maths, and the paper is laid out fairly nicely in that you have to earn 1 mark per minute. Looking at the questions, a lot of them are in some sense sort of elementary, in the sense that they use the kind of maths taught in high schools, although in some areas I would say the syllabus in calculus and a couple of other areas goes somewhat beyond what is currently taught in Australian schools or currently examined in Australian schools. But a lot of the questions are basically tricky or slightly sneaky, but also don't necessarily require you to work through the question in full detail. With multiple choice questions, you have to simply decide, can I reject this possibility or not? There is some attempt to stop people gaming that way by applying penalties to some wrong answers, but still it's very much a race against the clock.
I think the mathematics questions are clever. It looks for the person's understanding of the matter just rather than doing some direct questions. So in that sense, they're okay. They can be done. And some of these concepts I do even use in my course here, in master's course here, especially those involved with a system of linear equations and determinants and those concepts.
So concepts like high spin and low spin, inorganic complexes. That's something that at the University of Melbourne in first year chemistry we would treat in the second semester. There was a question on essentially Arrhenius equations, so a rate of a reaction as a function of free energy, of the Gibbs free energy. So here we go. It asks you something like the activation energy of the backward reaction exceeds that of the forward reaction by 2 RT. So again, you've got to basically, I think you'd have to sketch this out. You'd have to think about, okay, if the back reaction is exceeding the forward reaction, what's the reaction free energy? So it's not just the concepts that are difficult. I think it's asking you in a way that is tricky. You have to think about. It's not just enough to know the equation and you're going to throw in the numbers. You've got to think about it before you get the number you're throwing into the equation. And obviously, and they're not letting you have a calculator, so it's another challenge there.
Definitely, this will set up a basic, like a background and a baseline. So you could imagine that all the IIT students would have come with, they would have had formed up the fundamentals. But from then onwards, there are so many things to learn, because after you come to the IITs, there is still, only it will be like a bell curve again. For example, you give an exam to a very tough exam and choose the best in the world, and then give them another exam, and still again the performance is going to be like a bell. But this is kind of something that is it's kind of basic foundations for engineering. But I would guess nearly the majority of them would be ready to go for especially engineering education, and that explains why, for example, IIT students are, IIT graduates are doing well around the world.
I had a look at a couple of the 1-hour maths sections of papers, and I would say I would be fairly challenged to get a decent result on those in an hour. Partly because, as a professional mathematician, I'm interested in actually telling a story when I answer a problem. I want to lay out why the answer I'm producing is the answer. Simply being able to say, oh, the answer is 27, to me is not so helpful or so interesting. And in terms of future success in mathematics, or indeed in many scientific disciplines, the ability to reason properly and to explain your reasoning clearly is terribly, terribly important. So while I have no reason to believe that using the exam the way it's used isn't selecting very bright students for the engineering colleges that they're going to, it's not clear to me that it's the optimal selector of that. And there is also the ugly question of coaching and unequal access to resources. We all know that in any educational system, if you go to a good school, well-resourced with the best teachers and so on like that, you expect a better outcome. That's ultimately the main justification for spending money on education as a society, that if you work harder at it, you produce better results. But with these race against the clock style examinations, there's a trade-off between the students' ability in the subject, natural intelligence and other things like that, and they're having been trained to deal with examinations of this type.
Exams can have different purpose, and entry exams that are sort of in a form of a drill type of questions usually require students to prepare a lot before to practice. Brain is like any other muscle. The more you practice it, the better it gets. So when you have a large pool of candidates and only a small number of spaces, usually you have drill exams, because what they're showing is whether the candidate is serious enough, whether they're able to practice, and how they perform under time-limited, pressured environment conditions. They're not necessarily prediction whether that candidate will then do very well in the next step of education.
So right now I have two students who from Indian Institute of Technology, one from Delhi, other from Madras. So right now they are here and carrying out research on applying AI, artificial intelligence and deep learning techniques for medical application. So this work they are able to do within short span of time. They demonstrate their skills and ability.
maybe a train is moving at this velocity, at this speed. We need to consider, is it really possible, is it feasible? And then there are questions about experience. Have I actually seen a wire with Young's modulus of this? Is it possible?
Yeah,
Is it really possible? So those type of questions are actually come from experience. So we actually have to try out various experiments in lab. We have to know that what exactly are the ranges of practicality that exist in science.
2 marks or maybe half mark can change your rank by great amount. It's possible. Like getting -2 marks can decrease your rank by 200 or 400s. So you need to be very careful about how to attempt, which question to attempt, and you need to be very sure about attempting the question.
Maybe for other students that are preparing
The video
for JEE,
goes
I
on
feel
for
that,
another 6 minutes, right? And one of the things that I think that comes to mind are, why are Indians so good at this? Why are Indians so good at engineering and mathematics and computer engineering? And I think a lot of it has to do with the idea of Hinduism. As I've been learning more and more about Hinduism and seeing things and reading things, and people sending me some great emails explaining things, you know, and again, forgive me, my Hindu friends, if I misspeak on this, but one of the things that I was reading about were these kind of 4 levels of being like a Hindu practitioner. And one way of being like a good Hindu that could help you break the cycle of rebirth and death was obtaining knowledge. So I think when you look at an Indian who decides that they're going to go into this field, they have a mom and dad who's very motivated for their child to do well, right? Very motivated. A lot of pressure's put on them, and if they have any kind of sense of devotee, that this becomes more than just, I want to be an engineer like in the West, right? This becomes something that, like, this is who I am. This goes into the, you know, like the 5 points of power, and then align with this study, and it becomes something different, I think. Now, that's just a rambling of a madman, right? I don't know. What do you think? This was a cool video. It was interesting to hear these people, because I see the comments when people say, "Professor, I got to get ready for the exams. I can't watch." Well, here we go. Here are the exams. I feel you, brah. I feel you. So, very interesting video. I liked how it was done. I think it was cool to see experts look at this and say, "Ooh, man, there's a lot going on here," you know? So please let me know what you think of the video. Also, let me know what you think about the background. Something different. What? Something different. I see the comments, "It's too dark. It's too dark. It's just so gloomy. It's dark." Well, we're going to change it up a little bit. I'm also going to work on something called thumbnails. Apparently, it's pretty important for YouTube, for a little thumbnail. So I'll catch you guys later. Peace and much love.
Greetings. I am Minamoto no Yoshitsune, #1 samurai in Japan, and I am here to greet you on behalf of Movie Community College. The professor and the warrior queen would like to ask you to subscribe to their channel, Movie Community College. They are close to 200K and they need your help. Please like and subscribe to Movie Community College, or face the wrath of Japan's #1 samurai.